few days ago, I authored a post about replication and federation approaches in combining data from separate Kafka clusters. This post got great feedback, but I think a practical example may help. So here, today, we're going to talk about a simulated online marketplace. As the marketplace, we provide management and transactional capabilities for customers that host their own stores within our platform. To satisfy this, we have a payments domain, and this payments domain is responsible for recording details of every single transaction that happens within one of the stores. If I was to buy an item from a store, it will generate a message that will go on the transactions topic. Now, typically with these kind of marketplaces, it's not usual for us to settle the amount of the transaction with the customer immediately after the store has paid, after a customer has bought from the store. Instead, we will aggregate these transactions and settle at some future date, be it daily, weekly, monthly. In our organization, we have a separate domain, named the settlements domain, that is responsible for managing the terms and making these kind of settlements happen. So, for instance, if I was to buy an item from a store at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, the settlements domain would have a set of terms that knows we should aggregate those three amounts up, and then we should make a payment out to the customer of the combined amounts of all of them. As you can see, these domains use separate Kafka clusters, but they are deeply linked. We require the transactions and the settlement terms in order to be able to calculate how much we need to pay out to our customers at the end of the given period. A replication approach to this problem would copy one of these topics across to the other cluster. Let's say we move the settlement terms over here. Now what we've done is we've assembled all of the data that we need, and we can use the entire payments domain Kafka cluster to satisfy our analytics application. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the efficiencies of this kind of approach because I've covered it in the post. But what I do want to mention is that in this approach, we don't know the nature of the analytics query ahead of time, so we have to make sure that all data is copied across from our settlements domain to our payments domain. The federation approach is slightly different. In the federation approach, we source the data that we need from each Kafka cluster separately, and we combine it at query time in the analytics application. One difference in this approach is that we know the query that we're running ahead of time, so that we know that maybe we need a subset of data from transactions and a subset of data from the settlement terms in such a way that we can be a little bit more efficient in the ways in which we fetch the data from the various domains. So let's go and see that in action. I'm going to show you the federation approach using Streambased indexing technology. In my environment, I have a payments Kafka and a settlements Kafka. These are completely separate Kafka clusters, and just to underscore that point, let's go in and have a look at the topics that are in each of the Kafka clusters. If I go and look at my payments Kafka, just as we see from the diagram, I will see only a transactions topic. And similarly, if I go and look at my settlements Kafka, I will go and see only my settlement terms topic. At Streambased, we've introduced a further concept to the stream table duality, where we had messages were equivalent to rows, topics were equivalent to tables. What we've now done is added an extra element where database schemas are equivalent to Kafka clusters. So if I head over to my analytical application right now, I can show my database schemas, and what you will see is the two Kafka clusters. We'll see a payments and a settlements. By listing tables within these schemas, you will see something very similar to the Kafka topics commands that I ran. If we go for the payment schema, we will see a transactions table. If we go for the settlement schema, we will see a settlement terms table. By having this abstraction, it makes it very, very easy to combine to write a query that combines these two clusters. I simply fully qualify my table names with schema names, and that will map through using Streambased to the Kafka clusters that host the various topics and that make up these tables. For instance, in this query here, the one that will determine the settlement amount I need to pay out for a given store, I have used the transactions topic, and it comes from the payment schema and therefore from the payments cluster. I've joined that with the settlement terms topic, which comes from the settlements Kafka cluster. And there is I'm easily able to describe a join criteria that of a couple of columns that match in order to make this join happen. So if I execute that query now, it will pull the required data from both Kafka clusters and it will surface a result. What's interesting about this particular query is I have a rigid set of constraints that I can pass through to the read layer for my Kafka cluster. I know that I'm only interested in store ID, which represents a small percentage of the transactions topic. I know that I'm also only interested in currency ZWD, which represents a smaller percentage of the settlement terms topic. If we go back to our diagram, that means that I can push these constraints up into the read layer and pull only ZWD related messages from the settlement terms topic and only store ID ZZ123 related messages from the transactions topic. Using Streambased indexing is a really great way to be able to determine and push these constraints down and make these kind of reads really efficient. So using cross-cluster joins with Streambased, I've been able to satisfy my problem of figuring out how many Zimbabwean dollars I should pay out to store ZZ123 as a result of the transactions that have happened. How do you handle assembling data across Kafka clusters? Do you use a replication approach or do you use a federation approach? And what was the drivers behind that decision? Tell us in the comments.